Hello YouTube friends, Nathan Lawrence, Good News Tree Service in Wilsonville, Oregon. And today I'm going to give a real quick tutorial on candle pruning of, in this case, a Japanese red pine. So this is actually a table pine. It's a species of Pinus densiflora. It's a pine tree that's native to Japan. And this is actually a subspecies of the Pinus densiflora called the Japanese table pine. And this is a 2-needle pine. The needles are like 2.5 to 3 inches long, and the bark is red and exfoliating. And it's to be distinguished from the Scotch pine, this Pinus sylvestris, which is native to Scotland and northern Europe, which has also red bark, but the bark tends to be, on the more mature trees, tends to be more of a grayish brown color toward the bottom, but it can be reddish too, depending on where you live. And then it's a little bit redder in the younger bark as you go up the trunk into the trees. It's also both of them are 2-needle pines, so there's 2 needles on each fascicle. We pull one off here, and you'll see there's 2 needles on each bundle or fascicle. And both the Pinus densiflora, the Japanese red pine, and the Pinus sylvestris both have 2-needle fascicles. Whereas, as I said, the needles on the Japanese red pine are much longer. These are like these are more like 3.5 to 4 inches long, where they're shorter on the Scots pine or the Scottish pine or Pinus sylvestris. I'm going to do a quick tutorial on candle pruning of this tree. Now this tree has already been shaped, so this is not a tutorial on formative pruning. I will touch on that briefly, but this is basically what we call maintenance pruning. So this is, we're in Oregon, Northwest Oregon, and so summer has not started yet. Summer will not start, the hot summer will not start here in Oregon, typically for another 2 months. So basically end of July or beginning of August. So this is an ideal time to be pruning these candles while they are still green and tender. And now it may vary in different parts of America or elsewhere, but this is for this region. This is when we're doing this kind of pruning. So the formative pruning, basically we want to keep the shape the way it is. We don't really want it to get any larger. So we're going to basically cut these candles off completely and totally, so there's nothing left. Back to the green. This is this year's growth, and you see it's a real light color. They're very tender. They're flexible, and the brown wood behind this is last year's growth. And so we're cutting off this year's growth, and I'm going to be. I've got a special kind of pruners. Now you can use your regular Felcos, which I have here, which I don't think I'll be using, but I really like, this is more of a Japanese style, Japanese style pruners with a real pointed snout. And so we're just going to come in here like this, and I'm just going to be going through this by hand and cutting these all off right where the fresh tissue starts. Now, yes, you could take a hedge shears and you could shear this in a topiary type of a pruning, and that would be all right, but it's not the best. It's a lot faster, and that's what most people do, the pom-pom look, or we call it cloud pruning. And that's all right. But in this case, this customer has a very nice home, and they're very particular about their pruning. And they specifically requested that we use hand shears. We're going to get a better cut and better quality, and it's going to look better. But it takes about 3 times as long, or maybe 4 times as long. But the customer requests that, and they're willing to pay for the extra amount of time that it will take. So yes, we could take the hedge shears, we could take hand shears. I gave them that option, real small pointed hand shears, and we could go through here. But even with the hand shears, that is the hand hedge trimmers, we're still going to leave little stubs that are going to die, and you know, little stubs. They'll cut it. It'll cut out like that. Plus, it'll cut the needles, and it will give it a real uniform look, but it will leave stubs, which will die. And when you get up close, it's going to look, you know, in other words, if you cut these candles off here, then these will, well, these won't die, but they'll just, you're just not going to get a more of a natural look. Now, so instead we're going to be cutting back to there. Now, we don't want to go any further than that. We don't want to cut into the wood from the previous year. If we do that, there's good likelihood that this whole stem will die. So that's why we don't, and then you'll have a bunch of dead stems all over the place. That's why we don't cut. We're cutting at this time of the year when these new shoots are still tender, and we are not cutting into the brown wood. Now, if you wait and cut this too late, let's say in the fall, and by this time some of these will have hardened off, and if you cut the new shoots off, you may lose that whole part of that stem once it's hardened off. And so that's why we do it when it's tender. Now, this, as I said, this is maintenance pruning. If we were pruning this for formative pruning, it would be different, and this is not the case. But if you're doing more bonsai formative pruning, this is actually Niwaki, so we're pruning larger trees, garden trees, as opposed to the small potted bonsai, but the principles are the same. So if we were pruning formatively, and this really isn't a good example, I wish I had a mugo pine here or some smaller pine, but if we were pruning for, here's a good example. If we were pruning for, if we were pruning for what we call candle pruning, and for ramification, where we wanted the branch to spread out, we would be cutting back probably a half to 2/3, taking this off, and then because we still have 2 months of growing season left, then this, I'll probably even cut a little bit more, because we have 2 months of growing season, then this tender shoot would continue to grow, and it will send out some new buds, and then we would then do the bud pruning in the fall, like September, October, and then we would remove the buds. And I don't have any example on this tree, but we remove the buds that are going vertical or horizontal, and we keep the ones that were going out at 45-degree angles, more or less, spreading. So we get what we call ramification, and that way you get that spreading look, and you also get the shortened needle, because it only anyway, that's a whole nother discussion, and we're not doing that right now. So anyway, this is just formative pruning. So anyway, this is the before, and then I'm going to get in here with these little hand pruners, and I'll give you a picture afterwards. Also, while I'm pruning these, I'm going to be knocking out the dead needles, and if there's any dead branches, I'll prune them out too. So I'm going to be kind of cleaning, just kind of teasing these with my fingers to get out the dead needles. But the customer specifically wants what's called the cloud pruning, kind of this pom-pom look, but he wants it done naturally in a way that looks really kind of cool. And this is an acceptable way of Japanese style pruning, Niwaki pruning, and you see it in the Japanese gardens. So there you go. And then we'll come back later and we'll show you what this Japanese red table pine looks like after we get done. So the client changed his mind and decided to have us come back. I offered to do so at no expense, and to come back and to kind of take some electric hedge trimmers and just kind of even out some of the needles that were hanging down. This is a long needled pine, and it looked a little bit ratty, and so we decided to just kind of even it up a little bit. And as you can see, it does make a difference. We didn't cut any of the new growth. We just simply kind of went lightly over the top and on the undersides of the pine tree, and just kind of cut some of the long needles, and it just causes the tree to pop. It made all the difference in the world. It only took about half an hour to do this, and we were happy to have a happier customer, where this tree is much more presentable and much more tidy, just to have those long needles trimmed up. And so now it gives it more the cloud look, if you will. That's why it's called cloud pruning, because clouds are kind of round and fluffy and even, and that's what we have here. So enjoy.